Okay, so let's finish the slider. The only problem right now, everything works, but the problem is that this is not very reusable. We are just calling the slider right here, but inside the slider.js, the actual URL, it's kind of hard coded. We're always gonna get the article 0 and the 0, 1, 2, and 3. We're just gonna get those. This is hard coded. We are hard coding the type, so it's always going to be the featured one. What happens if we have a different case with a different template? It's not going to get rendered. The only thing that's going to get rendered is going to be the featured. So we're going to need to make some tiny changes. Okay, so let's go to home. And the first appearance of this slider, wherever we call this news slider, is going to be from within home. So we're going to be passing some settings. We're going to be passing some props. So first, we're going to change the type, which is going to be, in this case, we are going to use featured. Okay, I'm having a problem typing this word. I don't know what's going on. There we go. Okay, so it's type featured, and this one is going to be passed as props to the slider. So I'm going to go to slider, and since we are using a class, I'm going to go right here to type, and instead of hard coding, we're going to put this props.type, and this is going to be passed as featured right here. So it still works. If I go to slider, props.type is going to be featured. Very good. That works. Now whenever we make a request right here on the component will mount, we always get the same articles. We are always going to get the same thing. So I'm going to go back to home. I'm going to be passing more props. First, it's going to be the start, and it's going to be 0. So right here, when we go to slider, instead of putting start and 0, instead of putting 0, what we could do, we can make a reference to the props.start. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to go right here, and I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to, since you're using template strings right here, I'm going to make a reference to this.props.start. And of course, still works. So we have the same problem with end. We need to end it someplace. So I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to say amount. So instead of end, of course, we start at 0 and the amount of articles that we want to get. In this case, we're going to get just 3. So we're going to go back to slider, and we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to say this.props.amount. And this, of course, still works. If I go back to home and say amount of, 6, or maybe, 6, and then start at 3, we're going to get 3, starting from 3 and ending at 6. Let me just save it. And we get a different article. Completely different article. So, it's working. And this is a little bit more reusable than the other one. We have one more thing. Right here in slider templates, we have the settings. What happens if for this one I want the dots, but maybe if I call it from a different place, I don't want the dots. I want to set the dots as false. Okay, so I'm going to go back to home, and inside home, what I can do, I can pass as settings, just like that. And this one is going to be equal to an actual object. Remember that slider templates, the settings, it's an object. So we pass the same thing. So what I want to do, I want to get rid of the dots. So I'm going to say dots, and it's going to be equal to false. Good. So since this one is going to be passed as settings to slider. So we need to go right here to slider templates and make a reference of this, all right, of this as settings. So, okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to pass the settings as settings, of course. It's going to be equal to this.props.settings, just like that. And now settings is going to be available inside slider template. Now the thing is that right now dots, it's true. So the information, it's already here. How can we grab this props.settings and override the ones we have right here? Well, with ES6, what we can do, I'm going to add a comma right here. I could say ... then props dot and then settings. And whenever the application reads this information, it's going to be checking if settings has an information just has a value that it's already here. And this one is going to override the previous one. Since we have dots and it's set it to false, this one, the one we have right here, is going to override the one we have right here. So dots, now it's going to be false. Notice that we don't have the dots right now. And if I go back to home and set it to true or whatever, we get the dots. And if I delete it, by default, it's going to be true. You know, that works. So, okay, so I'm going to set it to false because I don't like the dots. Okay, so everything kind of works, and this is a reusable code. So what is the main point of all of this? What happens if I want the second slider? I'm going to copy all of this, go right here at the bottom. I want a second slider below this one. You know, something, it's kind of a dumb, but doesn't matter. So the type is still going to be featured, but I want to render the images from 0 to 3, and the dots, I want it to be true. So if I save this, we're going to get two sliders with different information, and this one has the dots. So now, if we wanted to include this from a different view, for example, I don't know, news or videos, we just copy this one, change the configuration, and it's going to work. And we don't need to check to change the code. We don't need to go all over again to slider and to create a new slider template. There's no need to do that. We already have some reusable code. So what happens if I want to change the template? Right now, we only have one template, you know, just one. We don't have a lot of templates. So what happens if, for example, what we can do, if I want a different template, we are not going to do it just to save time. We could add a new case, just like this case. And this one is going to be other, whatever. And then, of course, we add the break and we repeat the same exact thing. We're going to create a template that is going to be equal to something else, to props that whatever. It's going to do all the same logic. And the only difference is that it's going to return a different code, a different markup. That's the only difference. We're not going to do a different template. But know that you can do this. You can easily do this with templates. I'm going to go back to home and I'm going to delete this because we are not going to use it. Everything is kind of ready right now. This one is going to be start at 0 and it's going to end at 3. So I'm going to save it. And okay, so we get the first one, the second one, and the third one. Everything is working. So the next thing is going to be creating this tiny divs, these blocks. And this one, it's gonna contain, you know, the title, the theme, and the date. The problem is we can have a lot of prompts, and of course we have a load more news. So we're gonna be doing that on the next section. But this is a completely different widget. It's not part of the slider. Okay, so we are gonna kind of start a new section right here. So let's go to the next one.